Hello, my question is, you were speaking earlier today about having a player's handbook 2 released, in the upcoming year, so that, we wouldn't have to be, carrying around multiple books and, looking at, multiple different sources for player options and that. But then the list of products that you were talking about in the upcoming year had the Forgotten Realms book with special options for characters, and there was a fighter book that was talked about. So it seemed like that was contradicting what you said earlier. And I guess the concern is that just a long-term philosophy you're going to try to narrow that down, or is that you're talking about 2 separate sets of products that we're going to be talking about skill or just options for characters?
We're going to try to find a happy medium between a game that requires you to bring a lot of books every time you're working on your character, while still making sure that there are compelling products out there that give you new options. So, for instance, the Martial Power book is a book aimed directly at a subset of the classes, but when the Arcane Power book comes out in 2009, the player of the fighter is going to be able to say, I don't need that book. I've got my player's handbook, I've got my Martial Power book, I'm playing in the realm, so I've probably got my Forgotten Realms Player's Guide, but that's a much smaller number of books that were compelling than perhaps in 3rd edition. We're also really trying to get away from propagating long lists of feats and such in the other books. So, for instance, the 3rd edition Draconomicon had a bunch of prestige classes in it, it had a bunch of feats, had a bunch of magic items, so that became a sort of, well, this is one more book that I'm going to have to look through frequently. We're going to try to stay away from that approach with those sorts of books. Now, that said, there's still going to be a growing library of books with mechanical options for you, and that's part of Dungeons and Dragons. The rules database online is another avenue to help us combat that. Oh my gosh, I don't know where to find this conundrum that you can have.
I've had the pleasure of being a delegate for Wizards for the last 2 years.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed promoting Wizards products and helping local stores be successful. Sounds like a lot of the changes that you've announced from Gen Con to now are going to make it harder for stores to continue to promote the product. You're taking the codes out of the books and things of that sort. How do you see support for the stores and making sure the stores find success with 4th edition?
This is not, D&D Insider is not a replacement for hobby stores. They are still going to support D&D in a huge way through all the thousands of pages of books and minis and accessories that we'll release every year. We're expanding our organized play program to have more inclusion of play in stores. We'll be talking about that more at Gen Con. Right now we're talking about Living Forgotten Realms. We'll have a lot more to announce about our expanded OP programs at Gen Con. A lot of those include store-based programs. So we are not walking away from the core hobby store. That is where our bread is buttered and where we've had the most success, and where the growth in D&D has come from for the last 34 years. So I hope we aren't creating the perception we're walking away from retail, because I think game day is a testament to the strength of retail. 3,000 stores running a simultaneous event. That's going to be tens of thousands of players flocking to all core hobby stores to play 4th edition. I really hope that stores are doing Midnight Madness events Thursday at, people are lining up, and at 12:01 the doors open and you can go and get, your 3 core rule books. And then come back the next day after 24-hour crunch session of really grokking the rules, and then come back and play at game day on Saturday. So.
Hi. I just want to say that you guys have done a great job thinking outside the box and designing 4th edition, and a lot of the rule improvements are cool. I was wondering if any ideas that have come up in that process will be available as optional rules in an upcoming product, something like an Unearthed Arcana, or even a separate game entirely.
I'm not sure I exactly follow what you're asking.
I do.
Okay.
Read between the lines. D20 modern. Is that right? Or are you thinking of like My Little Pony RPG?
So some of the ideas that you came up with turned out to be not really D&D.
Okay.
So, hey, maybe I can answer a couple things.
Hey, Rob.
Hey folks, this is Rob Hainso, my lead designer for Dungeons & Dragons.
So, hey, hello. So your question is kind of funny. There have definitely been a lot of systems that you do not see a trace of in the playtest documents that have gone out. We played some systems that the original instructions were push the envelope, go as far as you can. And the question we asked at that time was like, you really mean that? And the answer was, yeah, we really mean that. Go as far as you can. It was like, all right, and it's like, whoosh. And then the people on the back of the cliff said, we're not playing Dungeons & Dragons anymore. And it was like, come back here. So, all right, we went back to playing Dungeons & Dragons. So there definitely are some systems that have come out of that. Now, my problem in terms of going ahead and telling you what those are is I don't really want to, because I want to go ahead and put out the games that use those systems. There were a couple systems we came up with that I thought were pretty cool, but I don't feel like just going, this is it, I used one of the mechanics we came up with in infighting. It was like infighting sort of uses a version that was in 4th edition at one point for its attack system, but that, something similar to that. But I think the truth is, therefore, when Scott said D&D Modern, D20, it's like, yes, there will be other games we do that end up using systems that didn't look enough like D&D. And I think that means we sort of have a backlog of interesting mechanical ideas to keep coming out. It also is the case that one of the problems with some of those earlier ideas is they weren't as flexible and they didn't have as much to build on as our final system does. So I'm sort of more excited now about the system we ended up with.
Certainly, the Unearthed Arcana that we did for 3rd edition was a fan favorite for a lot of folks. I know I really enjoyed working on it. But one of the things that made it a great and compelling book was that you had a few years of the game to compare it to. Right? The last thing we want to do is show you the game and then immediately right on the heels of that show you some other ways to play the game. So will we do another Unearthed Arcana at some point for 4th edition? I highly expect that we will. It's not on our radar right now, as you saw, but a couple years in, when we start getting a little antsy, want to try out some things that are a little crazier, yeah, that's the kind of place we might try that out.
Okay, my question's kind of twofold. I was wondering how you were going to incorporate errata into the database for the D&D Insider, and whether or not you're going to be a little quicker about getting them out than you had been in the third edition.
Sure. Sorry. Was there something else, or?
No, that was...
Okay. I'll take those in reverse order. As some of you have probably noticed, we've been able to get back on the errata horse a little bit in the last few months. As you might guess, over the last couple of years, we had some other time constraints, and there are only so many hours of the day that I could work my developers. So we've been trying to get back on a reasonable schedule for errata, using our customer service folks, using the RPGA to draw in that information and update it. As far as putting it into the rules database, that's another great facet of the rules database, is that any changes, any updates, patches that we need to apply to a feat or a power will be able to go straight into that rules database, seamlessly work its way in, so that, you won't even have to worry about changing your character sheet, right? It'll just update right for you. So that's a great feature of that rules database. But we certainly expect to be able to get a better schedule. Essentially, over the last several months, we've been playtesting our errata process and trying to get a little more robust feedback from the fans and process it. We don't want to rush it, because the last thing we want to do is publish an errata to an errata. So we have to balance the speed of getting those updates out with being confident that this is going to be the last word on it.